Tonight, the Department of Justice accused of a cover-up related to allegations Donald Trump sexually abused a minor.
This is the most egregious cover-up in American history. If the most powerful people are able to get away with these heinous crimes, then we are sending a horrible message to young people in this country.
Senior Democrats say files detailing the alleged assault were illegally withheld. The U.S. president has denied any wrongdoing. But he is facing calls from Hillary Clinton to testify under oath. Tomorrow, her husband, Bill, will have to explain his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Also coming up is social media harming our kids. After warnings about the dangers of doom scrolling, countries across Europe consider a ban for under 16s. And in the U.S., a landmark legal case with tech firms accused of intentionally making their products addictive. So is this social media's tobacco moment, the moment big firms are held accountable? Or is a blanket ban a step too far? We'll discuss that tonight. And art in a time of war. What happened when a group of Palestinian comedians tried to set up a stand-up circuit after the October 7th attacks? That's all coming up on The World with me, Barbara Serra. Good evening. We begin the program with the accusations of a cover-up and the public call for Donald Trump to give evidence after allegations he sexually abused a minor. Senior Democrats have accused the Department of Justice of illegally withholding FBI interviews with a survivor, which detailed the alleged sexual assault. The U.S. president has consistently denied any wrongdoing in relation to the pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. But tonight, he and the former president, Bill Clinton, are in the spotlight over their connections to the late billionaire. Mr. Clinton will give evidence tomorrow. Today, it's his wife's turn. And this is what she said in her opening statement to the House Oversight Committee. If this committee is serious about learning the truth about Epstein's trafficking crimes, it would not rely on press gaggles to get answers from our current president on his involvement. It would ask him directly under oath about the tens of thousands of times he shows up in the Epstein files. Well, that demand was echoed by Democratic members of Congress. Have a listen.
It is abundantly clear that this is the most egregious cover-up in American history. The recent reporting by the New York Times, NPR, and other media outlets that have verified this, demonstrating that the Department of Justice, in addition to violating the law over and over again, as they refuse to release the full and unredacted files, have withheld 50 pages of allegations against President Trump. This cover-up needs to end immediately. I am glad that we are here today as part of this ongoing investigation, because we will accept any information that anybody can give us about Jeffrey Epstein's vast child sex trafficking operation. I just want to say that young people in this country are watching right now. If the most powerful people in the United States of America, the elite and rich and powerful men and women, are able to get away with these heinous crimes, then we are sending a horrible message to young people in this country that powerful people will always protect themselves and the rule of law does not apply to everyone.
This committee has now set a new precedent about talking to presidents and former presidents. And we're demanding immediately that we ask President Trump to testify in front of our committee and be deposed in front of oversight Republicans and Democrats. And that should happen immediately. He is the person that appears almost more than anyone else in the committee, and it needs to happen right now.
Well, let's bring in our U.S. correspondent, James Matthews. And James, Hillary Clinton has spoken of a tactic to divert attention from Donald Trump. So let's start with those accusations of a cover-up.
Yeah, hi, Barbara. The Democrats, and you heard Robert Garcia there, backed up by Hillary Clinton, they reckon there is a cover-up around President Trump. And this week they are specifically focusing on FBI interviews with a victim of Jeffrey Epstein, and she says a victim of Donald Trump, of sexual abuse. Now, what happened is that this young girl gave interviews to the FBI many years ago, and she gave 4 interviews. But in the Epstein files, all that can be discovered is records of one of those interviews, one of the interviews that does not speak to sexual abuse by the president. So the Democrats, Hillary Clinton, are saying, well, hang on a minute, where are the other records of the other 3 interviews? Robert Garcia, he says that he has seen unredacted files pertaining to this particular situation, and he says that backs up the suggestion that Donald Trump was indeed implicated in what he's called heinous crimes. So that right now is as close to a smoking gun as the Democrats appear to be in terms of associating Donald Trump with any nefarious, possibly criminal behaviour in relation to the Epstein files. It's denied emphatically by Donald Trump and the White House. The Department of Justice, it says that nothing has been deleted, although it is conducting a review. I took the opportunity to ask James Comer about this. He's the Republican chair, largely responsible for bringing the Clintons here, kicking and screaming. They didn't want to be here, but he demanded that they turn up and ask questions. Well, I asked him the question about these missing FBI files. Are you concerned that there has been a cover-up of sexual abuse of a minor by President Trump? There are missing FBI records that appear to be.
No, we're looking into the accusation by the NPR. We don't know the answer to that. We know what the administration says. We're still looking to get a definitive answer on that. But look, let's just be realistic here. If you go by a lot of what the Democrats have said, you had Jasmine Crockett accused Lee Zeldin of taking donations from Jeffrey Epstein. It was the wrong Jeffrey Epstein. We've had Ro Khanna sit on the floor and name names of people that he thought were involved in Epstein that weren't even involved. So, sometimes the Democrats on the committee aren't the best investigators.
Well, James, Hillary Clinton is testifying today. It's her husband Bill's turn tomorrow. Talk us through what we know of the Clinton family's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, well, they knew Jeffrey Epstein to varying degrees. What Hillary Clinton is saying is that she cannot recall any engagement with Epstein, talking to him, meeting with him. James Comer, he has said in the past, look, we want to ask questions. In fact, he said this morning, he cited the wedding in 2010 of Chelsea Clinton, the daughter of Bill and Hillary. Ghislaine Maxwell was a guest at that wedding. Now, that post-dated, that came after the conviction of Jeffrey Epstein. It also came after a lawsuit by Virginia Giuffre, victim of Maxwell and Epstein. Came after she lodged a civil action which named Ghislaine Maxwell. There's also the business of a relative of Ghislaine Maxwell having worked for Hillary Clinton at the State Department and also for her presidential run in 2008. So that's the kind of territory that she has been quizzed on today over the course of some 5 hours. It did pause, I have to say, Barbara, at one point. We can show you the picture, a tweet tweeted by somebody called Benny Johnson. He was given that picture by Lorraine Boebert, the Republican representative, in there asking questions of Hillary Clinton. That was against House rules, said the Democrats, so there was a pause before they reconvened. I actually asked Lorraine Boebert, why did she tweet out that picture or send out that picture? Her answer was, why not? So there we are. I mean, that's today. It's not clear when this is going to finish, but it has been and promises to be a longer day, much to question her about. I suspect there'll be rather more to question Bill Clinton about. Of course, a man who travelled in Epstein's private jet, had various associations with him over the years. That's tomorrow, but right now it's Hillary Clinton, and she's calling this partisan political theatre. Hugely critical.
Yeah, she's been testifying for hours there. It'll be interesting to see what comes out when that ends. For the moment, James Matthews, thank you. Now, let's turn our attention to Geneva, and the third round of nuclear talks on Iran has just concluded. President Trump has previously warned that really bad things would happen if a deal is not reached on Iran's nuclear program.
I can say that we have made good progress after several hours of intensive negotiation. We have started serious discussions about elements of a deal, both in the field of nuclear issues and the removal of sanctions.
Well, that was Iran's foreign minister. Our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, is in Geneva for us tonight. And Dominic, these talks have been described as serious and positive, but what do you think that really means?
Well, I think they've certainly ended in a better place than where they were looking halfway through the day when the Omani brokered negotiations between the Americans and the Iranians sort of broke up and looked like it might not get back together again. There was a hiatus for a few hours. We were told that both sides were consulting with their capitals, but we wondered whether that just was a kind of sort of code for saying that they had broken up without agreement. And then we saw Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff getting back into cars at the hotel here, the Four Seasons Hotel, where they'd been hunkered down during the afternoon. And I shouted at Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, and asked him whether he was positive about the direction things were moving. So no sort of clear answer from Jared Kushner. But by the end of the day, we had heard from the Omanis that they had broken up and they had agreed. They broke up inconclusively, but they had agreed to continue talking next week. And those talks next week in Vienna, not Geneva, where they have been today, are going to be focusing on technical details. Now, it's hard to read what is going on. I think we can say that there have been substantive, meaningful negotiations. They do seem to have engaged on some sort of fundamental issues and made some progress. The Iranians appear to have moved the argument away from ballistic missiles, proxies, the treatment of Iranian people by their regime, which will be a sort of diplomatic victory of sorts for them, and focused on the nuclear issue and also on sanctions. I think the question now is, can they make progress next week on the crucial issue of nuclear enrichment? Donald Trump says they can't enrich uranium at all. They hope they'll be able to continue doing so at some kind of minimal level. Now, if they can square that circle, there is the potential for substantial progress next week. But I think there's still the fear that Donald Trump will run out of patience. He will fear he's being played by the Iranians, and there's still the potential for that massive amount of American military firepower that he has mustered in the region being unleashed if he does run out of patience. So not out of the woods yet, but certainly some clear progress today.
Dominic Waghorn with the latest for us in Geneva, where those talks have been taking place. Dominic, thank you. Now, it's difficult to be a good father during a war. The words of President Volodymyr Zelensky as he paid tribute to the phenomenal Ukrainian people for their resilience during one of the coldest winters the country has seen. He was speaking to our international correspondent, Alex Rossi.
I think that we have phenomenal people in Ukraine. It was really difficult, tough 4 years, and very difficult. This winter, I think I also thought about it, about danger, about morality of people, but they're strong.
Yeah, I mean, this was the harshest winter for a couple of decades. Minus 20,
minus 18, minus 20, minus 25, at night minus 30. But it doesn't matter day or night, because if you don't have heating, it's difficult during the day, during the night, even at night, more difficult, because minus 30 is so difficult. Big challenge for our people.
And 4 years, it's a long time.
Very.
How are you?
Like our people, yes. Trying to do our work each day. It's our job. And help people, speak and make results with partners, strengthening our army, helping with weapons, and also with civilians who really very helpful during this war.
We wear many caps in life. You're obviously the president of Ukraine, but you're a father, you're a husband.
Yeah.
How's your family? How are they coping? How are
During
they
the
fighting?
war, I'm not the best father, I think so, because I don't have too much time for my children. Yes, I can't compare anything with my family, but I'm the president of Ukraine. I don't compare my job, and I can't, because my choice is
duty.
Is duty. My choice is Ukraine. That's why I said I'm not a good father during the war.
And you'll be able to watch a full version of that interview tomorrow with Volodymyr Zelensky on Sky News on all our platforms. Now, I want to focus on one of the biggest dilemmas of the modern age, social media and its impact on young people. The UK, France, Spain, Denmark are all considering a ban for under-16s. Big tech bosses are being hauled into court in the US, accused of making their products intentionally addictive. And there is another dimension to this, the fact that so many people around the world now make their living from social media sites. Some argue that it actually helps strengthen connection and community. Tonight, we'll discuss what's likely a watershed moment for the industry. But we begin in Madrid, where our European correspondent, Siobhan Robbins, has been hearing all sides of the debate.
Is social media messing up our kids? Spain is one of the countries trying to get under-16s off this, hoping a ban will force them to log in to life offline. So is Spain right to rein in the reels? Do you agree with banning social media for under-16s or not? If you agree, put your hand up. So all of you agree?
I think we get as a society to a point that we have to do something about it, and I think a ban is the best option.
I think that as long as private companies own these apps, there won't be really positive things, because the only thing that matter is of you to be more time in the app and for them to make more money.
Phones are already banned at this Madrid school, but some have found it tough to say adios to their algorithms.
I was 5 or 6 hours a day watching a screen, and I failed like 3 or 4 exams, and my parents take off all those things, and then I started to have better marks.
When you have like everything in your phone, everything in your pocket, why would you want to travel when you can just like watch videos of people traveling? Why would you want to see your friends when you can just in a click like say something to them? It's horrible.
Does social media bring any benefits to your life, or do you think we just need to get rid of it?
I think it's good that the government wants to set a boundary, because it means they know there's a huge problem. But I believe it's more important that we set a time limit for ourselves.
I don't think teenagers have the ability to escape out of a system that is designed entirely around keeping them inside of that app.
I think what was really interesting there was just how aware the teenagers are of the dangers or potential pitfalls of social media. And we've all done it, haven't we? You're on your phone, suddenly you look and you've been scrolling for hours, you've lost all that time. They're clearly saying we need help, but are they ready en masse to give it up completely? It seems Spain's social media ban is splitting generations. While a 2025 poll found 82% of Spaniards backed blocking it for under 14s, only 41% of 14 to 29-year-olds gave a ban in schools the thumbs up. But few could rival Elon Musk's outrage, the ex-owner labelling Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez a tyrant and a traitor to the people of Spain. So who's right, and how does social media impact children's brains? Is social media dangerous for our kids?
Among girls and boys that have previously been using social media for hours, we see worse mental health. Social media platforms are made to hack the brain.
Spain isn't the only country trying to log kids out. France has tabled a law to ban under 15s from certain apps. All these countries, including Greece, Denmark and Austria, are working on similar restrictions. While the UK's promised to make children safer online, possibilities include phone curfews, curbing doom scrolling and blocking social media for under 16s. But Madrid content creator John thinks it's all going too far.
This ban is the same WhatsApp or social media platforms like Twitter or TikTok, and in my opinion it's not the same. Like in WhatsApp you speak with your classmates, and on the other hand, like in Twitter or TikTok you can find dangerous information. So in my opinion more important is that families do not make any decision on this. Like I think parents should be the first priority, and the state would not be like over the family.
These zombies disagree. This stunt is part of a campaign to stop people scrolling their lives away. Organisers say we're facing a health emergency.
Normally, if you're addicted to something, one of the ways you can get out of that addiction is because other people around you are going to tell you, you have to do something, right? But if everyone's an addict around you, there's going to be, fewer opportunities to actually quit that addiction that easy.
But social media platforms are pushing back. Telegram's owner saying the changes could turn Spain into a surveillance state.
The Spanish Prime Minister has called social media the digital Wild West, and it feels like we're getting closer to high noon, with more and more European countries telling the tech giants, hands off our kids.
Well, the opposition and strength of feeling has been building for over the past year. Last month, Australia imposed its ban. I want to bring you a quick reminder of how we got to this point.
I just communicate with my friends online, and I don't really do anything bad, so I don't know why they're banning every person that's under 16.
This reform will change lives.
There's ways to get around it, and they could have gotten around it a better way.
It is our hope and expectation that the social media platforms of tomorrow will be safer than the ones today.
You could fix this tomorrow if you wanted to.
Those safety promises are worth nothing, and I think the American people will see today that these companies have been lying to them to pad their own profits, and kids have died because of it.
Mr. Zuckerberg, did Meta purposely design the platform to harm children?
We're going to do a consultation on banning social media for under 16s.
Our science and technology reporter, Mickey Carroll, is here with me. Great to see you. I mean, a lot of eyes on Australia, really, to see how that ban will go. But it really does feel like a watershed moment. And today we heard from Instagram about how it plans to tackle the issue of children getting access to harmful material. What did they say?
Yeah, so for the first time, Instagram has announced that parents with parental supervision set up, so essentially parents who have linked their Instagram account to their teenagers, they'll now get notifications if their teenager is repeatedly searching for suicide and self-harm content. And crucially, it doesn't mean that they have to be searching for the words suicide or self-harm. It's phrases that Instagram thinks suggests that the teenager is planning to hurt themselves. So parents will get a notification on Instagram, but they'll also get a text or a WhatsApp or an email, depending on what they've got set up. Essentially, they're trying to contact those parents as quickly as possible. So they won't see what the teenager is searching for. They'll just get a kind of a general notification, but they'll also be given links, kind of expert links to guidance on how to have what could be a really tricky conversation with their teenager in that moment. And it's not just going to be for Instagram. So in a couple of weeks, we're going to, or in a couple of kind of weeks to months, we're going to see it roll out to Meta AI as well. So conversations that teenagers are having with Meta AI, if they start, again, repeatedly asking about suicide and self-harm, parents will again get that notification. But it's worth saying, I mean, this was announced today. It's a really new announcement. We've already had criticism from it. We've heard from Andy Burrows today, from the Molly Rose Foundation, who's incredibly critical of this update.
OK.
The evidence says that forced disclosures are always fraught with risk. Of course, there are circumstances when confidentiality needs to be breached, and when if a child is at risk, then parents will need to be notified. But it is a really fraught and sensitive decision. And frankly, this looks more like Instagram passing the buck to parents rather than having children's best interests at heart.
I mean, the whole idea that your kid could be accessing material related to suicide and you're not knowing it is terrifying enough. But there are several legal cases, some very similar to what has just been described, ongoing. And that is what ultimately could force the industry to change, couldn't it?
Yeah, this is a huge moment for social media companies, and it's maybe important timing for Instagram to release this update. I mean, there's a slew of court cases going through. We're talking kind of thousands of active court cases in the US. And it's being described as social media's tobacco moment. So that's a reference to the 1990s when tobacco companies were kind of finally held accountable for creating a harmful product that they knew was harmful at the time. But I think of the thousands of court cases that are going through, there are three that are really worth kind of watching and seeing how they develop. And that's because they go beyond looking at the content on social media, and instead they look at how the social media companies operate. And the reason they're doing that is because of a piece of legislation in the US called Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. And that piece of legislation means that social media companies can't be held accountable for content that's posted online by third-party users, so users like you and I. They're completely kind of absolved of responsibility for that. And that piece of legislation has squashed a lot of court cases in the past. So these cases go beyond that. The first one I think worth watching is in LA at the moment. There's a lot of media attention on this, partly because there's such huge voices testifying in it. So there's a young person known as KGM, who is saying that Meta and Google, and previously Snapchat and TikTok, but they settled out of court, harmed her mental health through creating addictive and harmful features on social media. So things like endless scrolling and body image filters. We've heard from Mark Zuckerberg, we've heard from the head of Instagram, Adam Mosseri, and they deny that social media can ever be addictive, that there's any scientific evidence for that, and that there needs to be really strong evidence that they've harmed young people in that case. So that's one to watch. The second case that I think is really interesting is from the UK. So there's 5 British parents that are suing TikTok in Delaware over the deaths of their children. So all 5 parents say that their children died attempting a really dangerous challenge called the Blackout Challenge that they say they saw on TikTok. So they're suing TikTok over their deaths, but they're not suing over the videos. Instead, they're suing over the algorithm that they say flooded their teenagers with a seemingly endless stream of harms. So that's about the kind of the volume of videos that teenagers get pushed. And if TikTok loses in this case, they'll have to change their algorithm, not just the content. Now, it's worth saying that TikTok completely denies all of that and says that it strictly prohibits content that encourages dangerous behaviour, and it also removes 99% of it before it even is flagged to them. Now, the third case, again, actually, it's a UK case that I think is really worth watching. I mean, all of these are in such sad scenarios, aren't they? Yes. But it's the trial following the family of Murray Dowie, who's a 16-year-old Scottish teenager. Now, he died after being blackmailed on Instagram. So his family is suing Meta. They're suing over his death, but they're not suing over the kind of messages that were sent to him or anything like that. They're suing over the recommendation algorithm that they say allowed sextortionists to target Murray on the app. Now, Meta says it's contesting the claims. It also says it works to stop suspicious accounts from being shown teen accounts like Murray's, and that it has protections in place for young users. But I think what's really important in all of these cases is they're not looking just at the content. If these companies lose, they'll have to change their addictive, if that's what it turns out to be, features. They'll have to change their algorithms and they'll have to change their recommendation features. So it's really important.
And I know that you'll be monitoring, of course, those cases for us. For the moment, Mickey Carroll, thank you so much. Well, now let's speak to Matthew P. Bergman, founding attorney of the Social Media Victims Law Center, who represent families with children allegedly harmed by social media and knows a lot about those cases, many of the ones that we were mentioning. Sir, thank you so much for joining us here on the program. First of all, just give us some examples, some of the families that you have been representing and what happened to their children.
Well, I represent all 3 of the families that you've referenced in California and Delaware. Involving families from both the UK and the United States and other countries around the world. And inevitably, these cases involve kids that get addicted to social media and are fed dangerous content and go down difficult rabbit holes that in all too many cases result in serious mental health harms and in some very tragic cases result in death.
We were just hearing there from Mickey Carroll talk about Section 230 protections. Now, that's Section 230 of the Communication Decency Act. It's a U.S. law about online platforms, effectively saying that they're not publishing this material, they're just a platform, they're not responsible for it. How key is that, and do you foresee changes in the way that that's interpreted?
Well, we have seen significant changes. Until we started filing these cases 4 years ago, Section 230 had prevented families from ever seeking justice on behalf of their kids. These cases were getting shut down before they even got started. We were able to focus, as your reporter indicated, on not the content, but the negligent and defective design of these algorithms, and in so doing, been able to advance these cases, in one case in all the way through trial. And we're about halfway through a 2-month trial in Los Angeles.
And we've seen a lot of countries, well, Australia has started already, and other countries are thinking it, about a total ban for social media for under 16s or younger children. What do you make of that? Do you think that's the answer? Do you think it's part of the answer?
Well, I think legislation is part of the answer. Public awareness is part of the answer, but also civil justice and litigation is part of the answer. until the companies have to bear the financial consequences of their deliberate design decisions, they're always going to do the bare minimum to comply with legislative mandates, as opposed to think proactively about how to make their platforms safe for our kids.
What do you make of the obviously international, transnational nature of social media? A lot of the companies are, of course, based in the United States. That's why U.S. law Section 230, for example, applies to them. But obviously, a lot of the countries taking care or, trying to change legislation aren't. Is it an added difficulty? Ultimately, does the real change have to come from the United States?
Well, I think we've gotten a lot of wonderful insights and great leadership from the UK and from the EU and other countries. The first case ever finding that a social media company was responsible for a child's death was the coroner's inquest in the Molly Russell case about 3 years ago. So we've really take our hat off to our colleagues across the pond in really holding these companies accountable. But I think it's going to have to be an international effort. I think we're seeing parents, not just in Europe and the United States, but really around the world, in the Arab world, throughout the world, saying enough is enough, that you can't mess with our kids, that our kids' lives are more important than your profits.
You now have thousands of families seeking your help, which I guess is just testament to how widespread this issue is and unfortunately how many times it leads to tragic consequences. What advice would you give to the parents, and do you think that there's generally more awareness now, even than perhaps there was a year ago among parents?
There's more and more awareness. When I started doing this work, parents didn't really know what an algorithm is, and now most parents do. What we find is parents really, for the most part, are really doing their level best to try to maintain control of what their kids are doing online, but it's very hard when the platforms really are designed to evade parental responsibility and oversight. But I think parents really need to do two things, and there's a little bit contradictory. On one hand, I think parents need to develop open and honest relationships with their kids where they can talk about difficult things and unpleasant subjects or embarrassing subjects, and try to get their kids to understand that they're really being played online. What we've learned from the scientific research is it doesn't do much good to tell a teenager, don't do this. But when teenagers are made aware that they are being manipulated for profit by these social media companies, they change their behavior. But the other thing parents need to do is really, and I hate to say this, but not necessarily take their kids' word as the last resort. Look, kids don't tell their parents everything they do, not because they're bad kids, but that's just what teenagers do. We all did. And so I think parents really need to take active and a little bit invasive efforts to monitor what their kids are doing. We all believe in the right of privacy. It's really important. But when the choice is privacy or our kids' lives, I would always err on the side of our kids' safety.
So in light of that, what does safe, ethical and enjoyable social media platforms look like to you? What would you like them to look like in 1-2 years' time?
Well, I'd like them to show kids what they want to see, not what they can't look away from. A kid looking for diet and exercise should get diet and exercise, not anorexic content. The algorithms should not be designed to prey on the kids' underdeveloped frontal cortices to enhance their engagement, but focus on the quality of their online experience. Turn off the algorithms and limit the time. I mean, in what earthly world should a kid be spending more than 2 hours online as opposed to playing with his friend, her or his friends outside, going on a date, reading a book, doing their homework, doing sports, talking on the telephone? All of these things, really are important for adolescent development. The other thing is provide basic warnings so that kids and parents know the risks out there. And finally, age and identity verification. Ensure that the people who are engaging with our kids online really are the people that our kids want to know, want to connect with, and are who they say they are. If adults want to hook up on Tinder, they have to verify their age and identity and often their geography. We provide less security to kids, to 12-year-olds on social media than we do adults looking to hook up online. I don't think that's right. I think that kids deserve greater protections, and these companies have the technology readily available to give it to them. They're just not doing it because it might cost them a little bit of ad revenue. Well, I think that I think that our kids' lives are more important than these companies' profits.
Matthew P. Bergman, founding attorney of the Social Media Victims Law Center. Sir, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. Thank you. Now, they are one of YouTube's most famous groups. The Sidemen started posting videos in 2013 of various challenges, sketches, and video game commentaries, and have since amassed a combined total of over 155 million subscribers. Let's take a look at one of their challenges.
Boys have flown out for a lovely holiday in Europe, but today there's a little twist. Every part of their trip is going to be decided by a coin flip, whether that's the food they eat, what activities they'll be doing, or even where they'll sleep. Let's go and meet the two teams at the border.
You are currently stood on the border between Slovakia and Austria.
Oh, okay. Very cool.
Your day today will be completely controlled by coin flips.
Yeah!
Whichever team calls the first coin flip correctly gets to choose whether they'd like to head east or west.
Okay.
Well, with me now is the man behind the group, their manager, Jordan Schwarzenberger, founder of Arcade Management, that's behind some of Europe's biggest content creators. Thank you so much for joining us here on The World. I'm sure you will have heard a little bit of that interview just a little bit earlier with the lawyer, and also a lot of the changes that some countries are thinking of implementing, and Australia already has. What's your view? Obviously, you work deeply connected with all, with social media, especially on YouTube. Are you in favor of a ban, for example? What do you think needs changing?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been in social media for the last 10 years. Started my career at Vice and at Lab Bible, so the biggest sort of social publishing businesses in the country. And I think this has really shifted over the last sort of few years, really since COVID and since TikTok. I think TikTok has been the catalyst for a lot of these problems. And the reason why is because it's really brought in these discovery algorithms, which are all about personalization. So you've had this hyper-personalization come in, where, and they say this, right, you're on the app for 1 or 2 minutes and it knows you. It knows exactly what you want, it knows exactly what you're going to want to see next, and so you're just stuck. So the retention mechanics behind these algorithms, which have now become the norm on Instagram and even on YouTube Shorts and, of course, on TikTok, that's far more addictive than social media ever used to be. And people say this, right? I want social media to be social, to be for my friends. So it's changed a lot over the years. I, for one, I don't think this is uncontroversial. Of course, for me, children should be protected. It's 13 currently is the limit. 16 is hardly elite, but I think it will do a massive job, actually, for helping for mental health for young people.
But so what you seem to be saying is what we were hearing before, that it's the algorithm that pushing things that it thinks you need, even if in some cases it could be content relating to suicide. And so we heard what Instagram has proposed today for parents to be aware when their kids are receiving that kind of material.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, look, it's the platforms will do what they can. They'll try and put out good messages, and of course they'll try and safeguard. But ultimately the algorithms are the algorithms, and they have one job, which is retention. All these platforms want is to keep people on the platform. And so, of course, it'll feed you more of what you want. And so for a young person who might be struggling with certain issues, it's very easy to get in a doom loop of content which reaffirms their anxieties, their depression, their challenges, whatever it might be. And there's no way out, arguably, because you're in that hole of the algorithm serving you more and more of what you want. So it's quite dangerous, I think.
You seem to think that YouTube are sort of the good guys in all of this, or the better guys, and obviously that would make sense because Sidemen have a huge presence there. But I would argue that YouTube, in a way, does the same. It's a longer format, but it still pushes the kind of material that it thinks you want, regardless of whether it's appropriate or not.
I think it's very different. You know, working with YouTube for many, many years, they've always said it's not a social media platform. When people get this wrong, YouTube is not social media. So when Australia banned, when, you know, all of that was being touted, always said, amazing, great for TikTok, for Instagram, and for Meta generally, I think makes sense. But for YouTube, that's an intentional search engine for video content. It's a different thing. It's not social media.
May I just pick you up on a point? I think a lot of parents would be saying, yeah, but my kids are on YouTube a lot more than they are. They probably don't even have Instagram, or, you know, they have YouTube Kids. So it may not be social media and, you know, the strict definition of the term, but it is still a digital platform where your child is interacting with things you don't necessarily know.
Yeah, and I think that the cool is for parents to get closer to the content. I think what's great about YouTube, though, is the intentionality of the platform. You see content, it's packaged in a way that might appeal to you, you click into it, and so you make the active choice. So it's a very different mechanic. On TikTok or on a feed-based sort of time, you know, scrolling-based mechanic, it's basically a slot machine. You're getting content again that the algorithm thinks you'll want, and it'll keep you there as long as you possibly can stay. With YouTube, on the other hand, it's not like that. It may show you suggestions and recommendations, but it's not forcing content into your face. Now, look, Shorts, I agree, Shorts is like that, and they copied ultimately that mechanic from TikTok and from Instagram. But YouTube as a whole, long form, I think is very different.
Okay, I mean, I don't want to just pick on YouTube, but I'm saying the shorts. It's that a lot of people just think that basically social media, and I think the quote often is that it's harmful by design because it is addictive by design. What do you make of that?
I think there's truth to that. And look, I've been, in a way, part of the problem working in social publishing for much of my career. But I think, again, it's really shifted with this short-form content revolution. And look, there's so much good that comes from short-form. You can reach mass awareness. You know, it's really how attention is moved and how consumers are expecting content to be delivered. But long-form is a different game. And that's why I think the Sidemen and others, they carry with them a deeper connection. But also I think parents generally are saying, look, the content is better. I'd rather my child sit down and watch an intentional, longer-form experience, which is essentially like a movie every week, rather than binging and doom scrolling for hours and hours on end, content that, again, feeds some of the negative things that they might be going through in their lives.
So, as we've been saying, a lot of countries, Australia has already taken measures banning social media for under 16s. A lot of countries, including this one, are now looking to Australia for inspiration and seeing how it goes. Elon Musk, not a man to mince his words, labelled the Spanish Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, a tyrant and a traitor to the people of Spain because of some of the measures that he wants to implement. What do you make of that quote by Elon Musk?
I mean, Elon's known for hyperbole. He understands the game. He's a content creator himself, right? So he knows how to get clicks and ultimately get attention online. I think that's absurd in the sense that, you know, this is a good measure for me. I back it fully in the sense that it is a message for harm. It's a message for parents. I think parents, ultimately, there's a generational divide in the way that young people and older people understand social media. I mean, we've grown up with it. I'm 28 years old. I was the first sort of Facebook generation. Kids today, they are really native to this platform. I mean, 92% of young people in the UK have a social media account by the age of 12.
Can I just pick you up because we're running out of time?
Please, sorry,
because the sort of younger kids are kind of native to it and the older generations, I'm pointing to myself, aren't. Do you think kids will always find a way to kind of override whatever protection their parents put in place? Because that's a worry.
Yeah, and brutally they probably will. But again, it's a statement. I think the statement is that there's harm to this and parents will think twice maybe before letting their 14 or 15-year-old jump on the platforms freely.
OK, Jordan Schwarzenberger, we're going to have to leave it there, manager of Sidemen. Thank you so much. It's been great talking to you. Thank you. This is The World with me, Barbara Serra. Coming up next, we're going to speak to the comedy club founded on the West Bank, who were due to perform on October 7th, 2023.
the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us?
Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office.
Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
They are a comedy collective founded on the West Bank. 6 Palestinians on a journey to find humour in the darkest of times. Their first performance in English in London was scheduled for October 7th, 2023. So how do you connect with your audience in the most divisive of times? That was a clip from the documentary Palestine Comedy Club, and I'm pleased to say that Ala Shehada, co-founder of the collective, and Charlotte Knowles, producer and co-director of that documentary, are with me now. Thank you both so much for joining us here on The World. Ala, let me start with you. I mean, before October 7th, because, of course, you'd founded this group to do stand-up comedy in the Palestinian territories, was founded before October 7th. What gave you the idea?
Well, the reality gave me the idea, the nature of our life as Palestinians, the stories that we have in our daily lives, my mother, my aunts, the families, the jokes, the amount of jokes and humor that we have in our culture is rich, is really rich. So that was very inspiring for me. We need a stand-up comedy circuit in Palestine and formalize it. So that's why.
And at the start, it was 6 comedians, and you all came from different places, and you performed in different places. So Ramallah in the West Bank, but also Nazareth in Israel, Jerusalem, which apparently was the hardest crowd. What made it the hardest crowd? What were the differences in different places where you performed?
Well, because when you come to Palestine, is a very divided communities because of the reality of the Israeli occupation that we face every day. So it does not allow for us as West Bankers to visit our people in Nazareth.
So you mean the checkpoints and the restrictions
the checkpoints
and travel?
And the wall and settlements. It's a very hard reality that makes not just the comedy circuit hard. Every circuit, every project that you want to build as a Palestinian is very hard to create. So that is the reality.
Just like, why Jerusalem? Why was that a difficult...
Well, Jerusalem, because it's a very hard place to reach for us as Palestinians. I'm a West Banker, and Jerusalem is like 2 hours from Jenin, and it's not allowed for me as West Banker to go and visit.
Now, and Charlotte, let me bring you in here. Now, as it happens, you were due to perform in London October 7th, 2023, when, of course, everything changed. Charlotte, just talk me through what was behind the idea of this film, the practicalities, because the film itself, based on this and what happened after October 7th, is actually in cinemas tomorrow.
It is, yeah, and it did not start as a feature, I should say that. It started as us trying to document what was happening with the tour in Palestine, as you said. And as the group gained in popularity, not just across the West Bank, but across the world, people started to get in touch and they wanted them to come and perform. And so the group were invited to perform in London, and we thought this would be the end of the film. We thought the film was over. And so when you guys came to London and then, of course, they got stuck and we didn't know how to get them home, that completely changed the course of the film. Suddenly we were telling a completely different story, and we had to ask some really difficult questions about whether we should be telling the story, how we should be telling the story, was comedy appropriate? All of these questions suddenly came up. And ultimately, you wanted to continue, the comedians wanted to continue, and so we continued to film, and the story evolved as it did.
And, I mean, you were scheduled to perform in London on October 7th. Just tell us what happened and what you were feeling on that day.
Well, the film is not about that day or that day.
More like how it changed,
a big history. Like, we started the project in 2019, and then in 2022 we started our first production called Ballad, and the UK was part of that tour. And it's happened that we were supposed to perform on that day. Of course, we couldn't because of the reality of that day. So, but at the end of the day, we wanted to move on and just tell the story with why we're here in London. So we kept moving with other shows, and then we came back last year. We did more and more shows, and Yeah, and it ended now. We're opening now, like the premiere of the film is again screening, and we have this big tour now in the UK. So it was not easy to deal with that, of course.
But you're still performing comedy. And you said earlier that, what gave you the idea, the reality gave you the idea to perform in the Palestinian territories. Obviously, you're performing now in a place where most people wouldn't, they might have read of it, but they don't know the reality of the Palestinian lands. So how does it change? How does your comedy adapt to the fact that you're speaking to an audience who may no longer... They may have empathy, but they don't know the reality. How
you mean here, internationally?
Internationally, yes.
Well, here comedy comes. It's the power of comedy that let people reach the Palestinian story differently and connect with them differently more than what you see in the news. And that's what the humor and comedy, that's the power of comedy, is allowing the international communities to connect with us on a different level, to show us our daily life, our jokes, our humor, because the reality is hard, but in that hard reality, there are a lot of humor, a lot of jokes. And jokes in our reality and humor is a way to survive. It's a way for us to keep moving and go through this hard reality, because it's very tough to live in the West Bank or in Gaza or anywhere in Palestine. It's very tough. Like, just to start your day is very tough. It's not like here. There is no stability in Palestine to start any project. There is no continuation. There is no circuit. So that's why it was for us, the Comedy Club is a great idea that we wanted to navigate and challenge the reality and create that continuation and that circuit of comedy. But, as everything else in Palestine, reality hits, and you need to go through and move on and navigate that and reach where you want to reach.
So what would you say that the audiences internationally here, for example, or in other parts of Europe where you've performed, get from your show that they wouldn't get from, I don't know, watching the news or another documentary that's more sort of, more traditional?
Well, it allows the international communities to know more about the society, about the community, about the families, about the traditions, about the habits, about how mourning can start in Palestine, how a gathering of Palestinian family can be, how a love story in Palestine, how a student...
Can I just... Do sometimes people feel awkward about laughing? Have you felt that in the audiences, that maybe they think the situation is terrible and they feel, I don't know, guilty, awkward, whatever, laughing?
No, but of course, I won't tell a joke over a tough story. Yeah. It's not like that. I need to navigate. This is my work as a comedian, how to tell that joke within that hard reality, you know what I mean? That allow the audience to take it in.
Charlotte, very briefly, tell us where we can watch the film.
The film's coming out in the UK, across England, Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales. We're starting in the UK in Belfast from tomorrow, and we'll be travelling around with it.
Okay. Charlotte Knowles, producer and co-director of the film, and Ala Shahada, comedian and co-founder of Palestine Comedy Club. Thank you both so much, and good luck with it.
Thank you so much.
Now, you've probably heard the phrase, those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it. And with America gearing up for the 250th anniversary of its founding revolution this year, historians are marking the moment. That's why the award-winning documentary maker, Ken Burns, has been looking back at America's beginnings.
The American Revolutionary Movement served as a model for freedom from oppression.
America is predicated on an idea that tells us who we are, where we came from, and what our forebears were willing to die for.
Crisis changes people. It gave different people different ideas about what they should be doing.
Well, Yalda Hakim sat down with Ken Burns this week to discuss what America's leaders can learn from history. Let's have a listen.
What you begin to see is that people use history as a cudgel. They use it to sort of promote a particular theory that they superimpose over the past. It's called historiography. It's a fashion of the academic academy or of other people. Oh, this is what happened, or this is what it is, or that we become kind of almost belligerent moralists in which we throw people out for doing things that are now bad. There's a kind of post-haste cancellation of people.
Well, you know, by politicizing history, and politicians do it all the time.
All the time.
You know, they shape ideology. They win elections by simplifying the sorts of things that you're talking about. And history is contested. It's you know, it's something that's incredibly, as you say, complicated. There aren't any right or wrong answers, but there are facts. How do you work around that?
It's contested only insofar as it is used as a weapon by people. It has a kind of superficial value in telling us what happened. The slogan of the Make America Great Again. And then you have to ask a basic question that has never been answered, which is, what period do you wish to go back to? When there was a segregated society, when people were enslaved, what was so great about which period? And it's never been answered.
I wonder why now, because of course, you've been working on this particular series, The American Revolution, for 8-10 years. You started during the Obama years.
We had no idea what to expect or what was going on, and now people are complimenting us on our timing, but we never do that. I think what's been so interesting is that so often I've released a film at just the moment when the country wants to hear it. I know we've been extraordinarily lucky that we've come out with many, many films, the Civil War, but this one in particular, where the country felt like it needed to hear this story.
And you can watch Yalda's full conversation with Ken Burns on the latest episode of The World podcast. Scan the QR code on the screen to listen now. And that's it for tonight. The team will be back on Monday. The Wrap with Anna Botting is coming up next. Bye-bye.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.